Let's talk about how muscles actually grow. Not what you've heard in random gym talk, not what you saw on social media, but what the science really says about hypertrophy. When we talk about muscle growth, we're talking about a process where muscle fibers increase in size. This doesn't happen magically after one great workout. It's a gradual adaptation your body makes in response to stress, the right kind of stress. When we talk about building muscle, the first and most important thing to understand is the concept of mechanical tension. This is the core driver of hypertrophy, the main signal that tells your muscles, hey, we need to grow. It's not about how sweaty you get, how much it burns, or even how sore you are afterward. What truly matters is how much meaningful progressive tension your muscles experience under load. Think of mechanical tension as the language your muscles speak. When you lift a weight, your muscle fibers generate force to overcome resistance. If that resistance is challenging enough, meaning you're training close to failure, and your muscles are forced to work hard through a full range of motion, they experience tension on a microscopic level. Inside each muscle fiber, this tension disturbs the normal structure, causing small amounts of stress and even minor damage to the cellular components. That disruption is what triggers the body's repair and growth mechanism. Now, let's make something clear. Tension doesn't mean pain. You don't need to chase the feeling of destruction to grow. What you're chasing is effective tension, the kind of resistance that makes your muscles work near their limit, but still within control and with good technique. Now, you could do 1,000 push-ups and yes, your chest might burn, but the tension per rep is low, so the growth signal is weak. On the other hand, performing a few sets of heavy controlled presses with proper form applies much higher mechanical tension and therefore a stronger growth stimulus. Mechanical tension is maximized when you combine two key factors: sufficient load and sufficient range of motion. Heavy weights alone aren't enough if you're cutting the movement short or relying on momentum. The muscle fibers need to experience that tension through their full length, especially in the stretched position where they're most sensitive to growth signals. That's why partial reps or ego lifting usually do more harm than good. They reduce the time and quality of tension on the muscle. But it's not just about one heavy session. Your body adapts. If you keep lifting the same weight for the same reps week after week, your muscles get used to that tension. The stimulus fades, and so does growth. That's where the principle of progressive overload comes in. Gradually increasing the challenge over time. Add a little more weight, perform an extra rep, or control the tempo to keep the muscles under tension longer. These small progressions accumulate, and your body continues to adapt by growing stronger and bigger. However, this doesn't mean more weight at all costs. The goal is to increase tension on the target muscle, not just move heavier objects from point A to point B. You can make a lighter weight more effective by focusing on controlled form, proper range, and keeping constant tension without letting the muscle rest during the set. This is what separates smart lifters from reckless ones. They understand that muscles don't count the plates on the bar. They only sense the tension they experience. A good way to think about it is like this. Your muscles are blind. They can't see how much weight you're lifting. They only feel how much force they need to generate. So a lighter weight performed slowly and under control can sometimes create more tension than a heavier weight thrown around with poor form. The quality of tension is more important than the number on the dumbbell. Now let's look at how the body interprets that tension. Inside each muscle fiber are structures called mechanoreceptors. These are specialized sensors that detect mechanical stress. When you train with proper intensity, those receptors send chemical signals that activate a cascade of cellular responses, things like increased protein synthesis, activation of satellite cells, and hormonal responses that all contribute to muscle repair and growth. This process doesn't happen overnight, but with repeated exposure to the right amount of tension, your body strengthens those fibers, making them thicker and more resilient.
One of the big mistakes people make is thinking that fatigue or pump equals growth.
The pump is nice. Sure, it feels great. It means blood is flowing to the muscle, but it's not the main trigger. You can get a pump from light cardio or even flexing your muscles, and that won't lead to real hypertrophy. Fatigue is similar. It's a byproduct of work, not the goal itself. What matters is the productive tension your muscles endure within sets that push them close to failure. The sweet spot for most lifters is working within moderate to heavy loads, around 6 to 20 reps. where you can maintain control and hit near failure while keeping form intact. Each rep should be deliberate. No bouncing, no rushing, just solid contractions and full control. Over time, that consistent application of mechanical tension drives adaptation. Recovery plays into this too. After applying mechanical tension in your training, your body needs time and nutrients to rebuild stronger fibers. Without recovery, that signal doesn't lead to growth, it just accumulates fatigue. So mechanical tension is the spark that starts the process, but recovery is the fuel that allows the process to complete. In essence, mechanical tension is the cornerstone of hypertrophy. Everything else, volume, intensity, frequency, revolves around how effectively you can create, sustain, and recover from it. If you focus your training on progressively applying meaningful tension to the right muscles, week after week, and you support that with proper nutrition and sleep, muscle growth isn't optional, it's inevitable. That's the science and the art of training. Not chasing exhaustion, not chasing soreness, but chasing progressive, intelligent tension. When you respect that principle and apply it consistently, your muscles respond exactly how nature designed them to, by growing. Once you've applied the right kind of training stimulus, that mechanical tension we talked about, the next big piece of the hypertrophy puzzle is muscle protein synthesis, or MPS. This is where the real growth happens. Training gives your body the reason to grow, but MPS gives your body the ability to grow. Without it, all the heavy lifting in the world won't add an ounce of muscle. Let's break it down in simple terms. When you train hard, you create micro tears in your muscle fibers. That's not a bad thing. It's the start of the process. After training, your body kicks into repair mode. Muscle protein synthesis is your body's way of rebuilding those damaged fibers, only this time a little thicker and stronger than before. Over many sessions, this repair and rebuild cycle leads to visible muscle growth. But here's the thing, training doesn't automatically mean building muscle. The repair process only leads to growth if MPS exceeds muscle protein breakdown, MPB. In other words, your body must build more new muscle tissue than it loses. When those two are equal, you're maintaining. When breakdown is higher than synthesis, you're actually losing muscle. So the goal for anyone serious about hypertrophy is to consistently tip that balance towards synthesis. Now, what drives muscle protein synthesis? There are two major factors, the training stimulus and the nutritional response. The first we've already covered, resistance training, especially hard, controlled, and progressive lifting, is the strongest activator of MPS. It turns on all the cellular signaling pathways that tell your body, time to build. But training alone doesn't supply the building materials. For that, you need protein, actual amino acids, circulating in your bloodstream. Think of it like this. Training is the construction order, but dietary protein provides the bricks and mortar. Without enough protein, you've told your body to build a house, but you've delivered no materials to the site. Nothing happens. So, how much protein do you need? For most people, trying to maximize muscle growth, around 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day is a solid range. That's enough to ensure your muscles have a steady supply of amino acids to repair and grow. And while the total amount per day is most important, timing does play a small but meaningful role. Spreading protein intake evenly across 3 to 5 meals per day helps keep muscle protein synthesis elevated for longer. After training, your muscles are particularly sensitive to nutrients. This is often called the anabolic window, and while it's not as short as old-school bodybuilding myths made it seem, it's still a good time to eat. Within a few hours after training, a meal with around 20-40 grams of high-quality protein, like chicken, fish, eggs, or whey, can maximize your body's ability to repair and grow. Pair that with some carbohydrates to replenish glycogen and support recovery, and you've set up the ideal environment for MPS to do its job. Now let's talk about what quality protein really means. Proteins are made up of amino acids, and among them, one called leucine is especially important for muscle growth. Leucine acts as a trigger for MPS. It tells the muscle cells to start building. Foods high in leucine, such as whey protein, beef, eggs, and dairy, tend to be more effective for stimulating MPS compared to plant-based sources that are lower in leucine. That doesn't mean plant proteins don't work. They do, but it may take slightly larger portions or smart combinations to get the same effect. But let's not make the mistake of thinking more is always better. Muscle protein synthesis has an upper limit per meal, roughly 30–40 grams of high-quality protein for most people. Eating beyond that in one sitting doesn't mean you'll grow faster. Your body can only use so much at once. The rest is just energy. That's why it's smarter to distribute your protein evenly throughout the day rather than trying to load it all up in one giant meal. And here's where recovery connects to nutrition. After a tough session, your muscle fibers are inflamed and damaged. MPS repairs that damage, but the process takes time and energy. If you're constantly underfed or not sleeping well, your recovery slows down. You might still activate MPS after training, but the signal gets weaker and shorter. Over time, that means less growth. So it's not just about eating protein, it's about recovering well enough for your body to use it effectively. Sleep is another underrated factor. During deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone and ramps up recovery processes, including protein synthesis. If you're training hard, but sleeping only 4 or 5 hours, you're basically interrupting your body halfway through the rebuilding process. You're lighting the fire for muscle growth, but never adding fuel. Let's also address the role of overall calories. You can't maximize MPS in a calorie deficit. Sure, you can build some muscle while dieting if you're new to lifting, but for most trained individuals, building serious muscle requires a calorie surplus. Not massive, but enough to give your body the energy it needs to grow. Think of MPS as a luxury process. It only happens efficiently when the body has extra resources. So the best results come when you combine all the right pieces: a strong training stimulus, sufficient total protein, smart meal timing, quality sleep, and a slight calorie surplus. That's how you keep muscle protein synthesis elevated more often than not, creating an environment where your body has no choice but to grow. And remember, consistency beats intensity. You don't need one perfect meal or one perfect workout. You need thousands of consistent, adequate repetitions of the process. Each meal, each session, each night of good sleep adds another brick to the foundation. Over weeks and months, those small, consistent actions compound into visible results. In simple terms, muscle growth isn't magic. You train to send the signal, you eat to support the process, and you recover to let it happen. The science of hypertrophy boils down to this: create the stimulus, fuel the repair, repeat consistently. That's muscle protein synthesis in action. It's not complicated, but it requires patience, precision, and discipline. And if you can nail those three, your results won't just be good, they'll be inevitable. Here's the thing about muscle growth that most people overlook: it doesn't happen in the gym. The training session is just the spark. The actual growth happens afterward, when you rest, recover, and allow your body to adapt. That's where the magic of hypertrophy truly takes place. And the balance between training volume and recovery determines how much progress you make over time. It's not the person who trains the hardest who wins, but the one who trains hard enough to grow and then recovers well enough to keep repeating that process. Let's start with a simple truth. Every time you train, you cause some level of muscle damage and fatigue. That's the point. You're intentionally disrupting homeostasis, the body's natural balance, so it's forced to adapt and rebuild stronger. But adaptation doesn't happen while you're lifting. It happens afterward. When you rest, your body shifts from a catabolic state where it's breaking down tissue to an anabolic state where it repairs and strengthens it. Without proper recovery, the muscle never gets the chance to rebuild fully. And instead of progressing, you start to plateau or even regress. A lot of lifters get caught in the trap of thinking that more is always better. More sets, more exercises, more days in the gym. But your body doesn't grow linearly with more work. It grows optimally within a certain range. There's a point where doing more training actually gives you less growth because your recovery systems can't keep up. When that happens, fatigue starts to accumulate faster than your body can repair it. You feel constantly sore, your performance drops, your sleep gets worse, and motivation fades. That's not discipline, that's mismanagement. The goal of good training is to hit the maximum recoverable volume, not the maximum possible volume. Think of it like budgeting. You have a limited amount of recovery currency, made up of your sleep, nutrition, stress levels, and genetics. Every hard set you perform spends some of that currency. If you spend more than you have, your recovery bank account goes into debt. For a while, you can keep pushing, but eventually you'll burn out. Smart training means knowing how much stress your body can handle, applying it deliberately, and then giving it enough time and resources to recover. Recovery isn't just about taking days off. It's about what happens between sessions. Sleep, for example, is arguably the single most powerful recovery tool we have. During deep sleep, your body releases growth hormone, repairs muscle tissue, and restores energy systems. If you're only sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night, you're short-circuiting your own progress. You can have the best training plan in the world, but without proper sleep, your recovery will always lag behind your training. Aim for 7 to 9 hours, not as a luxury, but as a requirement. Nutrition plays just as big a role. After training, your body is in a recovery state where it needs both protein to rebuild muscle and carbohydrates to replenish glycogen stores. Glycogen is your primary training fuel. Without it, performance and recovery both suffer. This is why eating enough calories overall, not just protein, is critical for muscle growth. Being in a chronic calorie deficit makes full recovery almost impossible because your body doesn't have enough energy to rebuild what's been broken down. Hydration and micronutrients also matter more than people realize. Muscles are mostly water, and dehydration can slow recovery, reduce performance, and even increase the risk of cramps or injury. Minerals like magnesium, potassium, and sodium support muscle function and repair. It's not flashy, but these small things add up. Recovery isn't one big secret. It's hundreds of small habits done consistently. There's also the mental side. Stress outside the gym directly affects recovery inside the gym. Your body doesn't differentiate between the stress of a heavy squat session and the stress of work, relationships, or lack of sleep. It all draws from the same recovery resources. That's why managing overall life stress is crucial if you want consistent progress. Meditation, walks, time outdoors, even just downtime away from screens, these things all lower systemic stress and improve your recovery capacity. Then comes the question of frequency. How often should you train each muscle group? The best answer depends on how fast you can recover from a given session. If you train chest so hard that it's sore for 5 days, training it twice a week might be too much. On the other hand, if your recovery is quick, good sleep, solid nutrition, moderate volume, you can handle higher frequency. The key is balancing the training stimulus with the time your body needs to fully respond to it. Think of it as a rhythm. Stress, recovery, adaptation, repeat. Too much stress, and the rhythm breaks. Too little stress, and there's no adaptation. Auto-regulation, adjusting your training based on how you actually feel, is another mark of smart recovery management. Some days you'll feel great and can push hard. Other days fatigue is high and it's smarter to pull back. Listening to your body doesn't make you weak. It keeps you growing. The best lifters don't ignore recovery. They master it. You can even think of recovery as an active process, not just passive rest. Light movement on rest days, walking, stretching, mobility work, helps increase blood flow, bringing nutrients to the muscles and removing waste products. That's why active recovery is often better than complete inactivity. It keeps your system primed without adding much fatigue. Over time, the interplay between training and recovery determines everything about your progress. When you're young, recovery is quick, and you can push hard with fewer consequences. As you gain more experience and more muscle, recovery takes more deliberate effort. The stronger you get, the heavier the loads you move, and the more recovery you need between sessions. That's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that your body is adapting to higher demands. At the end of the day, hypertrophy is not a sprint. It's a long-term adaptation game. Your ability to balance training stress with recovery resources determines how far you'll go. You can't force growth faster than your body can recover, but you can optimize recovery so that growth happens as efficiently as possible. That means training with purpose, fueling your body properly, sleeping deeply, and managing stress intelligently. So when you think about the science of hypertrophy, remember this: training is the stimulus, nutrition is the support, but recovery is the bridge that connects the two. Without it, nothing works. The lifters who truly transform their bodies aren't the ones who never rest. They're the ones who understand that rest is part of the work. They push hard, recover harder, and as a result, they grow. Not by chance, but by design.